Excuse me! May I have your attention, please? Go back!
Thank you.
Come in closer.
Bring it in.
If everyone could please move forward, that would be very helpful. We would like to begin the very, very formal part of these proceedings. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Helen Rozwadowski. I'm a History and Maritime Studies professor, a colleague of Steve's since I came to UConn, which was not nearly so long ago as when he came to UConn. Let's leave it at that. And I just want to welcome so many of you coming from so many parts of Steve's life and work and works and activities. This is really exciting to see all these people representing all these different things that Steve is involved with. It's pretty thrilling. We are here especially, of course, to recognize and thank Steve for his incalculably valuable service to the University of Connecticut, and especially to Avery Point, and especially to the marine and maritime parts of the Avery Point academic program. And just to give you a short overview, which is 2 dates, Steve first taught at UConn as an English graduate student, teaching freshman English in 1958-1959. So his association with UConn has been very, very, very long-standing. And he began teaching formally at Avery Point and continuously since then in 1968. So the campus opened in '67, and he has been here since almost the very first moment. So what we're going to be doing for the next few minutes is we're going to begin with a surprise for Steve. So where is Steve? Okay. Well, all right. Well, there's going to be first a surprise, which I will describe in a moment. And then there are going to be a handful of people coming up and speaking for no more than 3 to 5 minutes. And then Steve gets a rejoinder. So there you are. I encourage you, though, to please have some drinks and snacks and circulate around after the surprise, if you can do so quietly. So the surprise, as most of you know, but Steve does not yet know, is that we have a specially composed sea shanty that describes Steve's life, or much of it. And now Steve will get a copy of it. And I would like especially to thank Craig Edwards for helping the Maritime Studies faculty who wrote this write it in poetry instead of in academic prose. So thank you very much for that. And I will now turn the podium over to Craig, who will lead us in song. Would you like to give them instructions?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
There's a part for everyone in this, as is true in all sea shanties, and I guarantee you already know the words to your part, because it's simply Stephen Jones, and it's to the tune of a traditional shanty called Shallow Brown. So the melody will go da 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 da, and you'll all sing Stephen Jones. Let me hear that once. Stephen Jones. Then a second line which follows. Stephen Jones. So that one. Stephen Jones. And here we go. Digging ditches with my spade. Stephen Jones. Now shovel for an oar I'll trade. Stephen Jones. Shine my light out from the shore. Stephen Jones. As waves do crash and winds do roar. Stephen Jones. When his traps he lowered down. Stephen rocked for miles around. Stephen Jones. On that gal Sylvina Beale. Stephen Jones made her answer to the wheel. Stephen Jones, wooden plank and timber frame. Stephen Jones, to his harbor welcome came. Stephen Jones, like Ulysses and his oar. Stephen Jones, he's walking inland from the shore. Stephen Jones, like Prince of Denmark, skull in hand. Stephen Jones, he's clambered up onto the land. Stephen Jones, at Avery Point the tempest blew. Stephen Jones, Prospero and Ariel too. Stephen Jones, his students learned that they must know. Stephen Jones, from which point the wind did blow. Stephen Jones, sailors' lines in writer's hand. Stephen Jones, equally at his command. Stephen Jones, here where wooden keels meet waves. Stephen Jones, wisdom from the sea he gave. Stephen Jones, from silver screen to silver booth. Stephen Jones, returned with prizes from his cruise. Stephen Jones, with sails still full he now departs. Stephen Jones, yet we still hold him in our hearts. Stephen Jones, oh, he is our sparkling treasure. Stephen Jones, like the sea beyond our measure. Stephen Jones.
Thank you so much, Craig. That was great. And thank you all for participating.
I enjoyed it.
All right. Without further ado, I will begin by inviting Margaret Green to come forward. And I think I will let the speakers introduce themselves so you can do it how you want to.
Hi there. I began my career here at UConn, here at Avery Point, 20 years ago. And Steve Jones is responsible or at fault for that because he was on the hiring committee. And I remember when I was sitting across from him, he didn't look overly impressed. Most of the questions were about my academic research, and he really didn't look impressed at all. And Then he asked a question about teaching. And I think that's the moment where we connected.
That's right.
So, Steve is this wonderful combination of things. He's, for all his, he's not someone who appreciates the pomposity of academia. He likes winds, but he prefers them over the sea and not in confined classrooms. But for all that, you know, Steve has published or edited, he's written or edited 17 books. So, boy, he could say a lot if he wanted about his academic resume. He truly is a treasure for our campus, for this campus, and for the university as a whole. When maritime studies began to be constructed as a program, as a companion piece to what was then called coastal studies, it's really Steve's courses that he had been teaching for years that were the cornerstone for that initial vision of what the program would be like. And of course, now we've had now for quite some time the Maritime Studies major. It owes so much to Steve and his vision and commitment to interdisciplinarity, and his belief too, and I'm just going to use these terms because I don't have a problem with being pompous, but not only to interdisciplinarity, but to material culture. His belief that students should know what parts of a ship look like, for example. He's a wonderful combination of brilliant oratory skills and incredible humility. And for all his ability to speak off the cuff, extemporaneously for an hour or two, he's done it, as many of you know. He's also rather a shy fellow. And you can see him there in the corner, being shy. But if you just join me in a round of applause for our dear colleague and friend.
Three to 5 minutes, are you kidding me? No way, I'd say. Well, first, Joe Madaus asked me to extend his regrets. University kept him from being here today, and just is deeply sorry that he couldn't be here. Sorry, can you hear me in the back?
That's better.
Okay. The campus director, Joe Madaus, asked me to extend his regrets. He was unable to attend this afternoon, and he asked if I would say a few words on behalf of the faculty. None of the other faculty have agreed to that, so I'm just going to speak on my own behalf. I think they'll agree with most of what I have to say. Steve gave me a home here as someone who is interested in scholarship of the sea. I had a great job that I thought would never, ever be topped, working in Massachusetts. And I saw this position that came up, and Helen called me and said, "You've got to apply, it's a good home for you." I did, and I'm here. And the first few weeks were a little tough. I remember my first Mass Committee meeting with Steve. I think it was like, I went to one and then skipped him for a couple years. Steve looked at me, sizing me up. Margaret, I know exactly how you feel, by the way. And scared the pants off of me. Because I'd spent some time at sea, and I'd spent some time behind a book, but never, certainly not as much as this gentleman had. And then one day I was getting ready to go to class, and I sat down in the suite outside his office, and Steve sat down next to me and he started speaking. And I could have sat listening to him for hours. And in fact, I almost missed my class because of it. It was probably one of the most powerful moments of both acceptance and guidance and mentorship I have ever experienced as a scholar. And it was profound. It was profound. That was the type of person Steve was to faculty members. He guided us when we needed them, when we needed it. He encouraged us and made us laugh when we needed to be encouraged and to laugh. He motivated us when it was time to be motivated. But really, what I will take away is that Steve embodies probably the finest traditions of the sailor scholar that this region, if not this country, has. And there's a statue in the Boston Commonwealth, the Commonwealth Avenue Mall in Boston of Samuel Eliot Morison, a maritime historian, former admiral. And whether you agree with his findings or not, it's not important. But he has inscribed on that statue of Morison is the phrase, "Dream dreams and write them I, but live them first." And Steve showed me that that was indeed something you still have to do, even once you start your tenure track position and you start teaching at a university. That this is not the end of the adventure, it's the beginning of them, it's the beginning of the dreams. And for that, Steve, I'm incredibly grateful to you. And I've blown my time limit, that's fine, but thank you for everything. And make sure you come back and kick us youngins in the tail every once in a while. We need it. We need it. Thank you.